Hey guys, it's Talamic here with DNB Academy, and today I want to take a quick look at EQ. I think a lot of people get slightly overwhelmed with EQ and like when you need to use it and how you need to use it, and when people are talking about making sure things are sitting in their own space, what they mean by that and how we can implement that. So I've got this kind of basic idea I've just sketched for the video. If I go from like here, and as you can hear, there's like no processing at all. So we've got this piano which I've low passed, and then I've got this bass which I've sidechained but not done anything else to. Got our drums, bit of glue compression, and then we've got this effect. For a quick note, everything's from the Marathon 174 Marathon pack, all the samples that we have used. But yeah, so let's take a look. So with the piano, the first thing that we'll do, and I'll explain why we've got two pianos in a sec. They're playing exactly the same thing. They're literally copied, but we'll process them differently because the circumstances surrounding them in the tune is different. So we'll look at both these elements first. So I'll throw an EQ on. Thankfully, EQ in Ableton, which is what we're using today, has an analyzer built in. You can also use something like Span to see what frequencies are in your various elements as well. But a couple of things to note. One is that with the piano here, where it's been recorded, there's a little bit of kind of room noise and rumble. I'm just going to like lightly high pass that. We've got these notes sitting around 100 Hertz. I'm actually going to keep those in. We don't need those at the moment. Or sorry, we do want those at the moment. There's no sub or anything happening here. And I want the piano to be the focal element. If we had a vocal, we might kind of start dipping room for the vocal wherever that vocal hits. We don't have a vocal. So the focus should be on the piano. This atmospheric element down here has a sub in it. But if we high pass the sub out, can even drop some of those highs. And that's sitting much better. As a contrast, if I leave that low in the atmosphere, it sounds way cleaner. Everything feels a lot more focused just with that little high pass there. So moving on from this section then, I think one of the things to bear in mind as well before we move on actually is that one of the golden rules that people are always taught is to make sure that you're high passing everything other than your bass and like your drums. But they don't really explain what that means. So the reason we've high passed this atmosphere here is to make room for the low end in the piano here. There's no bass, there's no anything else. So we've high passed some of the noise out of the piano because we don't need it. We're getting rid of something that we don't need in that instrument. But if we had a sub or whatever else like we do here, the sub is taking up that low end space, is filling it up. And so when we EQ our piano here, we're going to want to high pass it much higher. So that's sitting around 100, and if I get an EQ just on this bass here, there's quite a lot of information in that same range there. Take some low mids out of that for taste. So that's another thing, and we won't touch too much on that because it's not really relevant to what we're talking about. But with low mids in pads and basses and things like that, sometimes you can just get away with scooping a little bit out to kind of focus it. But as I said, that's not really the purpose of the video today, so we'll talk about that another time. So this time, when we originally high passed to around there, you're just going to want to get rid of a lot of that information in those low mids. The other trick is just to make sure it doesn't sound like you've lost too much of that tone. But as a contrast, this is what they sound like soloed. Versus our drop piano, where we've got the sub, so we've done more of a high pass. Let me solo both of them. There we go. Cool. So before the drop, after the drop. It's a lot thinner. One of the things to bear in mind when you're EQing is if you're EQing stuff in isolation, then it's difficult to get perspective on how it sounds with everything else, because often stuff when it's isolated doesn't sound that good. Obviously with this atmosphere here, it's a background element. We've taken out all that low. I wouldn't really want to do too much more, if anything, to this, regardless of intro or drop, right? It sits fine, there's no mess. Like if we remove that EQ again, sounds horrendous with the sub bass as well. But with that high pass, it sits well, it works well in both. So basically what it is thinking about what elements you want in the forefront, what elements you want in the background, what elements are taking up what space. So again, coming back to it, the Reese, the sub, was taking up the low end here. So we've high passed this a little bit more. There's nothing else occupying that space in this part of our tune. And so we can have a piano that has a little bit more of that weight in the low end. You could high pass the piano more there, but it'll sound thinner and it just won't work as well. So yeah, there you go. If you have like a vocal and you want that to be the forefront of your tune, then you work differently. You're like, okay, well, I will take my piano and I'll make room for the vocal in the piano. See where your vocal is hitting the same way we did with the bass and the piano here. See what frequencies it's occupying and it's sort of largely sitting in, and then scoop those out of your piano a little bit. How much you can get away with taking out really depends on you. If it sounds a bit weird, you might have just taken out too much of a certain frequency. But yeah, nice little simple one there, but hopefully that helps some of you kind of work your way around EQ. Any questions, let us know, and I'll see you in the next one.